Hey y'all, it's Sarah. I have really missed you guys. For those of you that aren't members of the Peppermint Cactus group, just a quick update, and I won't take a lot of time to go into it, but I currently have a spinal cord injury due to an auto accident. I am waiting surgery. We are working on ways to try to get me past the pain and the loss of use in my arms. So if this is a little clumsy, just know that that's what it is. Uh, we've got the pain management right now kind of okay, which is why this is my first craft in a couple months. But it doesn't really help with the function. Only the surgery will do that. So just know that's kind of where that stands. I am dying to do this project. It has been driving me nuts not to craft. If you are a crafter like me, I'm sure you understand. I have been dying to get into some shenanigans. So you can see I've got a bunch of stuff right here. I'm ready to jump in and tell you what I've got, and let's get started. And since I'm a little rusty, guys, this may be long and awkward, and I apologize for that, but I still think the project's fun. So you can see I've got, I'm going to start with these large pieces so I don't end up knocking them down. I've got 3 sheets of black Readi-board foam core. If you guys don't know what this stuff is, you find this in your school supply section, your office supply section, places like Dollar Tree, Walmart, Dollar General, any of those places. It's about $1 a sheet or less, depending on where you go. And it comes in a 20 by 30 sheet. This video is actually sponsored by Readi-board. So you can see I've got a couple of full-size sheets of white and a couple of black. You don't necessarily have to have the black. You could do the same thing with white, but you'll see why I use the black for a couple of shortcuts. You could totally do whatever backer color you have on hand. You would just take a couple extra steps on the painting process. I'm using this to save me from having to do extra painting and making sure the back looks good and all that. So now that we're past that, I'm going to move these big sheets out of the way and show you these other little goodies I've got sitting here. And you probably recognize most of this. Dollar Tree has these amazing 3D stickers. You've seen me use some of these. I actually had book plate labels that I was going to use for this project, and then I remembered I had these, so I decided that I'm going to use these, but you could use book plate labels, and I'll show you what both of them look like. I've got 3 of these self-adhesive wall tiles that look like tin. Going to be using some hot glue, greenery, or whatever decoration you may want for this piece when it's done. These were the paint colors that I used to get my faux wood look, and that is its own tutorial in itself. There's several for whatever kind of wood tone you may want to go for. There's a lot of color options there, and that's just because it takes longer to teach the paint technique. It would make them even longer than what they are now. So these are the colors that I use to get the wood look that you're going to see. And I'm still going to be using a mix of these to kind of polish out my edges and things like that. One other thing that I'm likely going to need to use, and I may not, just depending on how well I bump them up, but this is just some of the Dollar Tree spackling and something to cut your foam core with, a good straight edge, whatever you're using to get your paint on your edges. I'm just using a Dollar Tree kitchen sponge that's been cut in half, and I think that's all the goodies I'm going to be using. I'm ready to dive in, guys. Okay, guys, to try to expedite things a little better than what I typically do, I've jumped a step ahead and went ahead and did some of my cuts. And I want to walk you through what I've got here. These are the thinner ones, and I'm going to tell you what I cut my backer to, or what I'm going to cut my backer to. But in the black, you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 black foam core strips cut at the longest length. The reason I always go the longest length is there is a natural manufacturing grain to the inner foam of this, and when you get the jagged edges, you tend to notice that that's when you cut along that 20-inch length, you get a lot cleaner of an edge at the 30-inch. So that's why I'm doing this, and then we'll cut everything down from there. So 4 of those. I've got 2 black strips at 4 inches. And then I have one at, this is at 2.5. So I'll almost have mirrored that with the white ones that you're going to ultimately faux paint. I have 2 of the 4-inch, 1 of the 2.5, and here's where it's slightly different. I've got 2, 4, 6 of these 3x30. So those are all of your pieces. These we really don't even have to touch till the very end. These are going to be kind of like stackers for me to kind of chunk this piece up a little bit. And the reason I went with black is so that I didn't have to paint these also and have a good blend along my edges and things like that. So I went with the black, and you'll see kind of as I go how that ends up working out. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I have cut these down to. You're going to want to go choose whatever paint finish that you want to use and get them painted and dried. Okay, as you can see here, I've got 2 of my black backer pieces ready to make my kind of base for this. I am going to go with one of these being at the full 30-inch length. So this is the long ways, and it's going to be cut down. I really tried to make it that 20, but it just didn't look the way I wanted it to. So this direction, you're going to cut that down to roughly around 18.5. If you're a little worried about that, give yourself extra. You can trim that off later, and you'll see why when you're maneuvering these pieces around those faux tiles. There's a little wiggle room around the edge of those tiles, so it depends on where you line it up on yours. So you likely could fit it in within the 18.5, but if you're a little worried about that, or you tend to not space 100% equally, give yourself a little bit of extra room, or just leave it at the 20 and trim it down at the end. The other piece, the other full size, we are going to cut that at the 18.5 by 15.5. And that's going to end up being joined together, and we'll be able to make one solid back piece. We're going to do some overlapping that'll give this really large piece, and you can see I am kind of panned out as far as I can go at the moment. But we're going to have about a 4-foot wide piece when this is all done. So I've already got this cut to the 18.5 this way. I've already marked it down to this 15.5 that I'm wanting to cut. I'm just going to double check I've got it correct, and I do. And I'm just going to flip this around, make it easier for me to cut. And for those of you that still struggle with cutting, there's a couple tips that I want to show you while I get my ruler lined up here. One, you can see there's little blue dots all through here. That is just Dollar Tree poster putty, sticky putty, the part that you find in the school supply area. I tack it to the back of my ruler so that I don't get any sliding once I've got it on my foam core. And that really secures it so I don't end up going off wonky or sliding off the wrong way. I'm going to start, I'm just using a regular straight blade. I'm using the little Dollar Tree silicone protector so that my fingertips don't get fatigued. I'm going to start well above to get my pressure. And I'm just going to whip down through there. That's part of why I cheated and got all my cuts done ahead of time. Guys, I got my husband to help with my cuts. Since I have not crafted with things going on lately, I did not trust myself as much with my blade. So I'm going to try to get through here cheating with pre-cuts and things like that, and still show you a pretty cute project with the end result. So you can see here's where we stand. Right here is my seam. I'm just going to try to see which little edge lines up a little better with this. This edge is a little different. It's perforated, so I want to get a smooth alignment. I've just got some black Dollar Tree duct tape. And I'm going to tape both sides, front and back, right along this seam. And don't worry, part of it's just going to be what's against the wall. The other part's going to be covered, so you're really never going. Okay, y'all, I totally lied to you on the number of 3" by 30" black strips. I actually was able to eke out enough off of this 3" by 30" strip from this end on this side to fill in the space up here. Hopefully you guys can see how I've got this framed out. So just subtract one of the 3" by 30" from the totals I gave you originally. This is the, I believe this is 2.5. I think it is. It's 2.5. I kept deciding, I kept trying to decide if I wanted to go 2.5 and 2 3/4. I'm pretty sure this is the 2.5, but you can see here, it's in this 11.5 length. So everything else is cut out to frame this direction. Let me slide this down so you guys can see. This is a really big piece. So everything with the black pieces, I'm laying out this way. I'm not gluing any of this down because my next step is I want to try to figure out my tile placement. And now I want to show you what I meant about where the little bit of playroom is. These are advertised as 12 by 12 or 12" yeah, 12 by 12 here in the package, but it ends up coming down with that ledge right there. So it is a full 12 by 12, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about here, where I wanted my pieces to align right along where that dimension starts. And if you can see that flat edge there. So that's what we're going to play with, is getting those aligned. And I'm going to use this right here as my guide really quick. I'm just going to notch me a few little pencil lines. You can make those as dark as you need to on this part. If you're like me and need to be able to see, you can make that pretty dark. So you can kind of see now why we need to place our tins down, so that we can bump all the way up under those edges and have all of that kind of embedded in there. So it looks like, I am almost willing to guess, if I was to come in and align at 2 3/4 at this top area, since our little framework is 3, it looks like that would give me a good alignment with that 10. And you know what? This ruler makes that really easy to kind of tell. All right, so I can see where I want to mark mine. And that's going to give me a good guide to getting those edges. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my lines marked out, and we're going to lay our tile. I've got my lines marked. I've got my tiles. Really quick, they have a little spot here that shows you where to peel it off from. I was going to paint these, and I actually have more of these. My husband ordered me some because I liked them so much. I decided that I really liked this color against the wood tones that I'm doing. So the next project, I'm going to show some kind of faux finishes to do on this. I opted to skip that this time around, just because once I got to putting the prototype of this thing together, I really liked it in this kind of shiny version. So I'm going to go on one edge and the other edge, and then we'll be able to get that middle. Guys, I save stuff like this. This is so good if you're working with alpha stickers or whatever, and you want to be able to lay your stickers out and line them up somewhere. And you can reuse this lots and lots of times. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I'm going to go ahead and get this one stuck down. Okay, I've got these two stuck down. To do this center one, all you got to do to get it down is measure the distance between here and here, divide it in half, find your center. I marked it right up here on this line, and I'm just going to take my tile and use its pattern to align it there, and now I'll have it kind of all spaced out pretty even all the way across. So I've jumped ahead, got my little black pieces on here dry fitted. Now you can kind of see why we went the route that we went. That way everything aligns really nicely on those kind of grooves there. On these, this is a point where you need to pull your paints out again, and these inner edges, we need to go ahead and get those painted on these black ones, or however you're going to do it if you're using white pieces as this layer also. This is the point you need to make sure that you're going ahead and doing these edges, because they'll be locked in and you'll see that edge once everything is stacked up. That's why I went with the black, so that I didn't have to do a lot of painting. I could just do the edges. And for me, I just have a mix of my Waverly Wax and Antique and kind of a little bit of blob of the ink, so it makes it a couple shades darker. This is what I'm going to use to do my edges on these black pieces. You could do just the inner edges on these pieces and wait to do these when we do this entire side section, which is likely what I'm going to do. That way my paint looks more even. That way the layers, because as you stack your paint and layer your paint, obviously it gets darker. So I'm just going to wait on the outer edges. I'm going to go ahead and paint at least the inner edges for all of these black pieces. We're not painting the entire piece or any of that. Literally, we are just going to hit these edges. Now, if you're using white ones, you want to go a little further in on this, because sometimes if you don't get that stack really nice and even, you'll see that white shining through as opposed to something darker. You're not going to notice it. It's going to blend in with your faux wood look. So you do kind of want to pay attention to that. And you can see what I mean. If you're doing the white, you want to come over on this edge just a little bit more. I don't have to keep it super clean. We're not going to see any of this. We're going over it with our wood look. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of these edges, and then we get to glue all of this fun stuff down. By the way, I'm not necessarily going to show a video of this. However, I have also built this same look as this frame for myself because I loved how this looked, but I also loved the other idea that I'm going to be showing you with the kind of flower box frame to it. So if you see a different version of this in any photos I might post, it's because when I got to this stage, I just framed it out and did this big giant piece. But I'm also going to show you, I'm actually going to be showing the flower box version. As you can see, I've already glued my outer frame around, making sure that I got the edges as flush as possible. Then I'm going to pop these two center pieces in. It's a lot easier to kind of work these in than to come across here and shove this up against there if you don't have this edge flushed. So that's what I did. The last part I've got on this is just to get these down the center. And if you notice on these, I did go ahead and do both sides of these because it'll be a little harder to do it after the fact. And I'm going to put this to the side, and we're going to start constructing our boxes really quickly. So let's construct these boxes. I'm going in the order that I'm going in to allow that other piece to finish letting those painted out edges dry. So I'm going to go ahead and end with the construction of the kind of flower boxes for this. So you see that I have one 3" by 30" painted on one side. I just took a kind of a cheater route, and my little sponge that I did the edges with, I just came in and just got some color on the back of this You don't have to be perfect with this. This is going to be towards the inside of the box that you're really not even going to be able to see into that well. So it doesn't have to have the good graining that you would want from your other pieces. I did that, however, so that the white wouldn't show through. And you can see this is my usable side and this is going to be the inside. So my next step here, this is where some of the 11.5-inch cuts that I was telling you about, that I said I would show you the best way to cut these. So to construct one of these quote-unquote flower box pieces, we're going to be able to build the whole box out of just this one strip if we get the cuts right. So I'm going to come in at 11.5. We're going to come in again at 11.5. And then the next piece is going to be 2 3/4, and then another one at 2 3/4. So this is the cuts we ended up with out of that 1 3-inch strip. I didn't mention bringing in some of the Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks, but I'm going to use these as kind of to secure this little thing and to give it a good back piece rather than to build a full box and add that little bit of bulk. And you'll see what I mean. So I've got a little standing block here, and I'm just using that to be kind of my angle. Look at your pieces and determine which one you want to be your front face. I'm doing that. This is going to be my front face. I'm going to come in. This is the easiest way I found. You construct it whichever way kind of is easier for you. Guys, I just got this Sure Bonder hot glue gun from my husband, who surprised me with it. This is my first time getting to use it since I got it, and I'm loving it so far. That is not a sponsorship. That is his gift to me, and I really like it. So you can see what I did. I just flipped that up. I've got it flush down, just like that. And we're going to come in with these pieces. And we can do all of these edges once this thing is constructed. You could have also done the inside once it was constructed if you found that easier. I just found it easier to do that one whole strip all at once. And I'm going to play with this while I have a little wiggle room. I'm going to attach this right there, making sure my inside is going in. And the easiest way I found to do that is I just came along right here, kind of worked that glue right up to the edge. And then I'm sliding that down on there. And that way, if there's any glue overage, it's pushing it towards the inside of my box up this way. And I'm just going to hold that in place for a minute. Use my little block to help me make sure that I'm getting as close to 90 degrees as possible. And I'm going to go ahead and do this end, and then I'll show you where these come in. Really quick, this is where I am right now. Now is a point, if you want to go in and get a little heavier with your hot glue right here, you can go ahead and do that. You can always come back in with a little paint and cover that up. I am going to do that. I'm not going to see inside of my box very well with the greenery that I'm going to put in it. But you can keep it nice and neat if you need to. So I'm just reinforcing those now. And I'm going to do the same bit of reinforcement using these guys. I'm going down this edge and this edge. I'm going to slide this up against here. I'm just using this other block to help me kind of smooth it along here and make sure that it's going as flush as possible to this edge. Do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm going to do it one more time the long way. And this is just going to give me kind of my attachment point to get this on our other little unit. So I've got all of that flush. I'm going to come in with this one. I really am impressed with this glue gun. I use Dollar Tree glue sticks pretty much exclusively, and they can be a little messy, and I'm not having near the mess. So I'm pretty thrilled about that. I'm not having it near the strings either. So same thing here. Now you can see what I have built out there. I'm just going to come in now with my little still saturated sponge that I've been doing my edges. I'm going to do these edges. I'm going to also go ahead and do those. I'm not going to do these backs though. I don't really want any paint on here because that's what I'm going to use to glue down. So I'm just going to do this front portion. You really don't have to. Once it's attached, you're not going to see that. But for my own sake, I'm going to go ahead and paint all of that. Okay guys, when you're done, you should have 3 of these constructed all the very same way. I'm going to slide these over just a bit. I'm bringing in the Dollar Tree stickers. This is an 8-piece set, and you can kind of see what these have. The really cool thing is that this is actually a 2-piece. I've got just some black chalk paint. I have just gone in where this is a little shinier than I wanted it to. I tapped some of the black in, and you can kind of see the difference in these versus this one that I did not do. And I just came in with a paper towel and rubbed a lot of that off, and just a hair changed kind of the tone. And that's all I did to alter mine. You can see here, this is kind of my finished little construction. The really cool thing, this is what I mean about it, is being 2 pieces. So you can absolutely use it with the words if you wanted to, or you can completely use it without. So I think I am going to just use it without. And I am not really sure how well this adhesive that comes on it is going to stick to this wax paint surface. However, for me, I'm going to come back in before I attach these and add just some scrapbooking brads here. If you notice, it's got some little holes that you can do that with. That's what I'm going to do with mine, but I wanted to give you that idea. So I wanted to show you really quick what I mean. You can see now that I have these little brads. These just pop straight through, and normally they have prongs that you just open up and attach on the other side. The foam core is so thick that mine are not going to want to open up. So to resolve those little pokey parts, I'm just going to come in really quick and put a little dot of hot glue over the tops of those just to keep them from scratching anyone if they were to stick their hand in there. So that's one idea. You could also, you guys have seen me use, these are like the little carpet tacks from Walmart. They're like $1. They did go up. They're $1 and some change now. I use these, which are scrapbooking brads. You could use anything. This is another idea. This was the book plates that I was intending on using from the beginning. I made these on my own. They're made out of cardboard. And I used an old school Sizzix machine to do that. You Cricut users could probably do the same thing, or actually go on Amazon and purchase the metal versions of these. I like going this route because they're really lightweight. The stickers are also really lightweight. So that's what I'm going with. Let's jump into the next part. Okay, y'all, let's talk about construction here. So this is one of my 4-inch strips. What I've done is cut it down so that I had really smooth cut ends, especially right here on this end. I went ahead and made sure that that little cut edge was painted. And you're going to see I have a cut clean edge on this piece. I need to come in also with my little sponge that still has my paint on it. And I want to make sure that it is entirely filled in. We're going to blend these pieces together, so that's why I'm being so particular at the moment. And it's easier on this one, instead of trying to cut it to size, it is easier to leave that full length, bump this thing as close together as you possibly can. And then we're going to trim off that edge. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. Now you can see where they have lined up. I was able to cut really flush to there and really push up against this seam right here. I'm not too worried about this seam. You can also see why we layered the way that we did on these edges, and how these overlapping spots really offer a little more security on this. So when you go to start building out on this other side, you want to do, you want to do the same thing. You want to overlap those. And I am trying to determine, I am likely going to try to get the seam to align here in the middle and do the very same thing. So I'm going to want to cut these edges again really nice and smooth and straight, and get those popped into place, and then we'll pop these guys into place, and then you'll kind of start to see how this is coming together. So I wanted to show you before I glued this last piece down. This is another seam area, but I wanted to show you anywhere that we've got these joints. If you take just a little extra care in making sure that you glue nicely in those areas as well, you'll have such a really secure piece. Guys, really, I'm loving this Surebonder glue gun. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to try to joint up against this seam once again as close as possible. Now, I don't have a problem with how this one actually turned out, and you can see it has done very well as far as looking okay as a seam. But if you have a problem with this, and I'm going to show you on another project as soon as I have the capabilities of getting to a new project. This is kind of taking me a little bit of effort to do, but I am going to show you how to deal with some of this. So my next step is to go ahead and trim this off flush, and then we're going to add the last few pieces. Okay guys, I know this has been long, but now we're down to the really fun part. So you could take this piece just like it is, which I love, which I have, it ended up, when I was making the prototype for this, I liked it that way, so I have one like that. This is where it could be fun. You could come in and go just as simple as this, and still a really cute piece. If you have a problem with the seam at the top, you could always cover it. I've got these both started out as little 3x3 squares. You could always do something like that very easily, or something like that. I've got a little things. This has these corner pieces that I wanted to point out could be really fun. This is just some popsicle sticks painted black. You could always add those as some kind of iron looking accessories. I'm going to bring in my finished little boxes here. And I'm just kind of looking at these little shapes right here. Two of them were similar and one of them was slightly different. So I'm just trying to figure out where I wanted those. So for me, I'm going to drop down a little bit to there. This is why I was not worried about the seam here. You can see where we're going with this. These little kind of junction points there that we created, this is what I wanted them for, is an attachment point. So I'm going to start with this middle one. I'm going to go in and do those. When you're hot gluing these raw edges of the foam, do be careful. It will melt on you. If you've got it on there for too long, it can definitely melt that edge on you. Really quick tip, while I have these sitting here kind of attached down, I came back in with my hot glue, and from this inside angle, I'm going to secure this a little better by hitting right along where it touches to the back frame portion. And I did that with every single one once they were adhered down. Okay, guys, so that's pretty much it. Now you can see where I am. You can do so many things with this. Obviously, you're going to keep it lightweight. It can hold a little bit depending on how many loads of glue you kind of put down in your little boxes. But you certainly can get a little bit of weight in there. You can always put some floral foam or just some crumpled up paper or moss in there to lift things up. You could always attach a wreath. You could throw in some greenery. You could honestly, since it's lightweight, you could honestly use it to sort your mail. But how cute is this? I love these little details. I really am kicking myself for not getting more of these when I had the opportunity. I still may go back in and add some of the other details that I showed you. Somewhere along here, I could very well come in and add one of these little decorative pieces. Like I said, I don't really have a problem with my seam. On one of the projects that I do have in my brain, I want to show you guys really clean ways to cover that. The only last thing I would suggest is, like I do with all of my edges, once I'm done, I typically will come in really lightly if I have any spots that aren't lining up. Sand that down just lightly because you don't want to start shredding this, and go ahead and touch up all your paint edges so that edge and all the edges around look like one solid big piece. Guys, it's hard to tell, and I know some of you have told me this before. It's really hard to tell how big some of my pieces turn out until you actually physically make it. This is a really substantial piece. I'll try to get some pictures up of it hung on the wall. I'm really looking forward to getting this put up in my foyer. I hope you liked it. I miss you guys so much. I don't know how many things I'm going to get done over the next few weeks while I'm waiting for the neurosurgeon. But I'm actually at a point where I can function a little clumsy, although it is. So I hope to get a bunch more things done because I've got so many ideas driving me crazy. For those that have sent me positive thoughts on the group and those kind of things, thank you guys. This is not something I had planned or expected, and I'm certainly frustrated to not be at the activity level that I'm used to. And it's driving me crazy not to craft the way I'm used to. But thank you guys for bearing with me and being so supportive. I can't wait to get more ideas to you because I have been overwhelmed with them. I hope you like this one. I really kind of adore it. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, y'all.